When Jake Morrison opened his door to the rain-soaked stranger that November night, he had no idea he was letting in a woman who would shatter every wall he'd spent 7 years building. The knock came at 9:47 on a Thursday, cutting through the sound of water hammering his roof like gravel thrown against tin. He'd just finished reading Where the Wild Things Are to his daughter for the third night running, Lily's current favorite, the one she insisted on with the stubborn certainty only a 7-year-old could muster. She was finally asleep, her small hand curled around the stuffed cat she'd named Mr. Whiskers, her breathing soft and even in the dim glow of her nightlight. Jake had been heading toward the kitchen, thinking about the leftover pizza in the fridge and the transmission he needed to finish rebuilding tomorrow, when the knock stopped him mid-step. He wasn't expecting anyone. He never expected anyone. His life had narrowed to a predictable circuit: the repair shop, the grocery store, Lily's school, home. The kind of routine that kept you upright when everything else had tried to knock you down. He moved toward the front door, his sock feet silent on the worn hardwood, and peered through the peephole. The porch light illuminated a figure huddled against the rain, arms wrapped around themselves, dark hair plastered to their head. A woman, young, shivering. Jake's first instinct was caution, the learned wariness of someone who'd been burned before, who'd rebuilt his life from ashes and couldn't afford another fire. But his second instinct, the one that lived deeper, was the same one that made him stop for broken-down cars on the highway, that made him fix Mrs. Henderson's lawnmower for free, that made him the kind of father who read the same story 3 nights running without complaint. He opened the door. The woman looked up, and Jake saw fear flicker across her face before she tried to hide it behind something that might have been dignity if it hadn't been trembling so hard. She was maybe 27, 28, with dark eyes that held more weight than someone that young should carry. Her jacket, expensive, even soaked through, clung to her frame, and she'd wrapped her arms around a designer leather handbag like it was the only solid thing left in the world. But it was the contradiction that struck him, the tailored clothes that screamed money, paired with the posture of someone who'd forgotten how to ask for help. Her voice barely rose above the rain. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to bother you. She stopped, her jaw clenching against the cold, or the emotion, or both. "My ride left me at the gas station about 2 miles back, and my phone's dead, and I don't—" Another pause, longer this time. "I saw your light." Jake should have said no, should have offered to call her a taxi maybe, or given her directions to the nearest hotel. Should have protected the quiet life he'd built, the safe space he'd created for Lily and himself. But he was looking at someone's daughter, standing in the rain, and he was thinking about how the universe had a way of keeping score, and he was remembering the version of himself that used to believe in helping even when it wasn't convenient. "Come inside. You're going to freeze." The relief that washed over her face was almost painful to see. "Thank you. God, thank you. I promise I'm not some kind of—" She was shaking so hard she could barely get the words out. "Just come in. We'll figure it out." She stepped across the threshold, dripping onto the small rug by the door, and Jake got his first real look at her in the light. Beautiful wasn't the right word, but it was the only one that came to mind in that moment. Not in the polished way of the women in the cologne ads Lily sometimes saw on TV before Jake changed the channel. Beautiful in a raw, unfinished way, like something expensive that had been left out in the weather too long. "I'm Sophia Lancaster." She set her handbag down carefully, like it might contain something breakable. "And I swear I'm not usually the kind of person who ends up stranded in the rain, knocking on strangers' doors at—" She glanced at the clock on the wall. "Jesus, almost 10. I'm so sorry." "Jake Morrison." He gestured toward the living room. "And you're not the first person to have a bad night. Sit down, I'll get you a towel." He moved to the linen closet in the hallway, listening to the soft sounds of her settling onto the couch, the creak of old springs that had held the weight of his family for longer than he liked to think about. This couch had been here when he'd brought his wife home from the hospital with newborn Lily, had been here through the fights that started quiet and ended with doors closing too hard. Had been here the night Sarah told him she couldn't do this anymore, couldn't do the small house and the modest life and the dreams that stayed dreams. Had been here through all the nights after, when he'd sat alone in the dark, wondering how you were supposed to explain to a 3-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming back. He grabbed a towel and one of his old sweatshirts, something warm and dry, and headed back to the living room. Sophia was perched on the edge of the couch, trying not to drip on anything, her hands folded in her lap. But Jake noticed the way her eyes had swept the room when she entered, not with curiosity, but with assessment, the same way someone might evaluate a property. The posture was perfect, despite the exhaustion, shoulders back even as they trembled. "Here." He handed her the towel and sweatshirt. "Bathroom's down the hall if you want to change, and I can throw your clothes in the dryer." She took them, her fingers brushing his briefly. Her hands were ice cold, a shock against his calloused palms. "You don't have to do all this. You're already here. Might as well be warm." Something shifted in her expression, a crack in whatever wall she'd been holding up. "Thank you. I mean it down to my bones." While Sophia was in the bathroom, Jake moved to the kitchen and started a pot of coffee. His hands worked on autopilot, measuring grounds, filling the reservoir, while his mind tried to catch up with the reality of having a stranger in his house. He should probably call someone, make sure she was who she said she was, that this wasn't some elaborate setup for what? Robbing a mechanic who barely had 2 nickels to rub together? Kidnapping a 7-year-old from a house with locks that barely worked? No, he was being paranoid. The woman was scared and cold and stranded, and he'd done the right thing. That's all this was. The bathroom door opened, and Sophia emerged in his old Portland State sweatshirt, the one from the 2 semesters he'd managed before Lily came along and life demanded different priorities. It hung nearly to her knees, the sleeves rolled up 3 times, and she'd wrung most of the water from her hair. She looked younger like this, vulnerable in a way that made the expensive clothes from earlier seem like armor she'd been forced to shed. "I can't believe I ended up here. This whole night has been..." She stopped, shook her head. "I don't even know where to start." Jake poured 2 cups of coffee and brought them to the living room, settling into the armchair across from her. "Start wherever makes sense. You said your ride left you?" Sophia wrapped both hands around the mug like she was trying to absorb all its warmth at once. "I work for Lancaster and Associates, real estate development, and I was supposed to meet some colleagues tonight. We were going to this property showing downtown, but the person who was driving got into a fight with her assistant, and we stopped at this gas station, and she told me to get out. Just like that. Get out." She stared into the coffee. "And I did because I'm an idiot who doesn't know how to stand up for herself, apparently. And then she just drove off." Jake searched for a word that wouldn't sound judgmental. "That's a hell of a thing for a colleague to do." "Yeah, well..." Sophia's laugh was brittle. "I'm starting to realize I might not be great at picking people to trust, or reading situations in general." She took a sip of coffee, winced at the heat. "My phone died before I could call anyone else, and I didn't have cash for a taxi. And I started walking because what else was I supposed to do? And then it started raining harder, and I was so cold I couldn't think straight. And I saw your house, and..." She met his eyes. "And you opened the door, which was either really kind or really stupid, I'm not sure which yet. Probably both, but I've got a daughter, 7 years old, asleep down the hall, and if she ever ends up cold and scared and stranded somewhere, I hope someone would let her inside. Something in Sophia's expression softened, the hard edges of the executive facade melting just slightly. You're a good dad. I try to be. He set his coffee down. Look, I can charge your phone if you want to call someone to pick you up, or I can give you money for a cab. Whatever you need. Sophia hesitated, and Jake watched her weigh something internally, some calculation he couldn't quite read. Could I maybe just stay tonight? On your couch? I promise I'll be gone first thing in the morning, and I won't touch anything, and I can't face going back right now. Can't face explaining this, or dealing with the questions, or... She stopped. I know how that sounds. Woman shows up soaking wet asking to spend the night with a stranger, but I swear I'm not crazy. I'm just tired, and I just need somewhere to not be on display for one night. Jake should have said no. Every practical instinct he possessed was screaming at him to call that cab, send her on her way, maintain the boundaries that kept his small world safe. But he was looking at the exhaustion in her eyes, the defeat in the set of her shoulders, and he was thinking about all the nights he'd wanted someone to offer him shelter from the storms he couldn't name. Yeah, you can stay. I'll get you a blanket and a pillow. Relief washed over her face like a wave. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. Jake set her up on the couch with the extra bedding from the hall closet, showed her where the bathroom was again, told her to help herself to anything in the kitchen if she got hungry. Sophia curled up under the blanket, still clutching the coffee mug, and watched him with those dark eyes that seemed to hold too many questions she didn't know how to ask. Jake, she said it as he was heading back to his bedroom. He turned. Yeah? Why did you open the door? Really? He thought about it for a moment, trying to find words for something that lived more in instinct than reason. Because someone needed help, and I remembered what it was like to need it. He left her there in the dim glow of the lamp he'd left on, and went to check on Lily before heading to his own bed. His daughter was still sleeping soundly, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin, her face peaceful in a way that made Jake's chest ache with the fierce protectiveness that had defined him since the moment she was born. He stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, and wondered what he'd just invited into their carefully constructed world. Sometimes the moments that change your life don't arrive with trumpets and fanfare. They come in the shape of a stranger knocking on your door in the rain, and you have to choose between safety and kindness, between protecting yourself and remembering that you used to be the kind of person who helped without counting the cost. Jake woke at 6:15 the next morning, the way he always did, his internal clock more reliable than any alarm. He lay there for a moment, listening to the sounds of his house settling, before he remembered the woman on his couch, the stranger he'd let spend the night, the beautiful executive who'd appeared out of the rain like something from a story he didn't know he was part of. He dressed quietly and padded down the hall, half expecting to find the living room empty, Sophia gone like she'd never been there at all. But she was still asleep, curled on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek, the blanket pulled up to her shoulders. In sleep, she looked peaceful, but Jake noticed the tension that remained even in rest, the way her body stayed coiled, as if ready to spring awake at the slightest sound. This was a woman who didn't know how to fully let her guard down, even in unconsciousness. He moved to the kitchen and started breakfast, the same thing he made every morning: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. The routine that anchored him, that gave shape to the hours before they sprawled out into something unmanageable. He was flipping the eggs when Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, Mr. Whiskers dangling from one hand. "Morning, sweetheart," You sleep okay? Lily nodded, then froze, her gaze fixing on something behind him. Jake turned to see Sophia standing in the living room doorway, his sweatshirt rumpled from sleep, her hair a wild tangle around her face. She looked uncertain, like she wasn't sure whether she was allowed to be there in the daylight. Hi. Sophia offered a small wave to Lily, who stared at her with the unabashed curiosity of a 7-year-old who'd just discovered something unexpected in her familiar world.
Who are you?
This is Sophia. She needed a place to stay last night because she got stuck in the rain. Remember how we talked about helping people when they need it? Lily nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Sophia's face.
Are you a spy?
Sophia laughed, surprised and genuine. No, sweetheart. Why would you think that?
Because you sleep weird, like Daddy does when he has nightmares. Like you're ready to run.
Jake felt something twist in his chest at his daughter's observation, at the way she'd seen in seconds what he'd only half noticed himself. Sophia's smile faltered just slightly. That's very perceptive. No, I'm not a spy. Just a regular person who got very lucky that your dad is so nice.
Oh.
Lily considered this, her small face serious. Do you like pancakes? Daddy makes really good pancakes on Saturdays, but it's Friday, so we're having eggs. I think eggs sound perfect. Sophia glanced at Jake, clearly unsure where this was going. Can I help? Sure. You can set the table if you want. They moved through the small kitchen in a careful dance, Jake finishing the eggs, while Sophia located plates and silverware with Lily's enthusiastic direction. The little girl chattered about her school, about her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who was nice except when you didn't clean up the art supplies, about the boy named Connor, who tried to trade her his chocolate milk for her apple slices at lunch yesterday. Sophia listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Lily's dramatic retellings. Jake found himself watching the two of them instead of eating his own breakfast. There was something in the way Sophia talked to Lily. Not the condescending baby talk some adults used, not the awkward over-enthusiasm of people who didn't really like kids. Just honest and direct, treating his daughter like a small person worth taking seriously. And Lily, usually shy around strangers, had opened up completely, as if she'd known Sophia for years instead of minutes. This was dangerous. He could feel it. The way warmth crept into spaces that had been cold for so long. The way his house felt different with someone else in it. The way Lily's laughter sounded louder, brighter, more alive. After breakfast, while Lily played with her dolls in the living room, Sophia helped Jake clear the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes before she spoke. I should probably go. I've already taken up too much of your time. You don't have to rush out. I don't have to be at the shop until 9. Sophia set a plate in the drying rack and turned to face him, leaning against the counter. Can I ask you something? Sure. Where is Lily's mom? Jake had been expecting this question eventually. It always came up sooner or later when people realized he was doing this alone. He'd gotten good at the short version, the one that didn't invite follow-up questions or pity. She left. 7 years ago. Decided this wasn't the life she wanted. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're okay. Better than okay, actually. Lily's happy. He paused, looking for the right word. I'm managing. You're doing more than managing. Lily's amazing, and she's like that because of you. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, suddenly aware of how small his kitchen was, how close Sophia was standing, how easy it would be to reach out and... No. He shut that thought down before it could finish forming. This woman was probably 10 years younger than him, from a completely different world. And she'd be gone in an hour anyway, back to her executive life, her colleagues who abandoned people at gas stations, her existence that had nothing to do with single fathers and worn-out houses and transmission rebuilds. I should give you my number. Sophia pulled out her phone, now charged from the outlet near the couch. In case you ever need, I don't know, real estate advice? Bad investment tips? Jake smiled, despite himself. Yeah, that comes up a lot in my line of work. But he took out his own phone, and they exchanged numbers, and when Sophia's fingers brushed his as she showed him where to type in the contact, Jake felt that same jolt of something he'd felt the night before, something he didn't have a name for yet, something that felt like possibility. Sophia gathered her things, pulled on her jacket, still slightly damp from the dryer, and knelt down to say goodbye to Lily. It was really nice to meet you, and Mr. Whiskers. Are you coming back? Lily asked with the blunt directness of children who haven't learned yet that some questions are better left unasked. Sophia glanced at Jake, and he saw the same uncertainty he felt reflected in her eyes. I don't know, but I hope so. Jake walked her to the door, and they stood there for a moment in the early morning light, Portland's perpetual drizzle misting the air beyond the porch. Thank you for everything, for not turning me away, for giving me somewhere to land, I guess. You're welcome. And Sophia, if you ever need somewhere to land again, you've got my number. She smiled, a real smile this time, the kind that reached her eyes and made her face light up in a way that did complicated things to Jake's carefully guarded heart. I'll remember that. And then she was walking down his driveway, calling an Uber on her phone, disappearing into the gray morning like she'd been nothing but a dream. Jake stood in the doorway watching her go, feeling the cold air seep into his house, and he knew with absolute certainty that something had shifted, that the careful balance he'd maintained, the safe distance he'd kept from anything that might hurt him again, it was already compromised. He just didn't know yet how much it would cost him. The first text came 3 days later, on Sunday afternoon while Jake was under a '98 Camry trying to figure out why the damn thing kept stalling out. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he rolled out from under the car, his hands covered in grease, and checked the screen. Hi, it's Sophia. I know this is random, but I was wondering if you and Lily wanted to get coffee sometime. My treat, obviously, since you saved my life and all. Jake stared at the message for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was where he should say thanks, but no thanks. Keep the boundaries clear, maintain the distance that kept everyone safe. But he was thinking about Lily's question. Are you coming back? And the way his daughter had been humming more this week, drawing pictures of a woman with dark hair, who she said was her new friend. Coffee sounds good. When were you thinking? They made plans for the following Saturday at a cafe near Jake's house, somewhere casual, somewhere that wouldn't feel like a date, because this definitely wasn't a date. Sophia was just being friendly, paying back a kindness. That's all this was. But when Saturday came and Jake pulled up with Lily bouncing excitedly in her booster seat, and he saw Sophia waiting outside with 2 cups of hot chocolate and a smile that made his stomach flip in ways he'd forgotten were possible, he knew he was lying to himself. Lily! Sophia crouched down to his daughter's level, offering her one of the hot chocolates. I got this for you, with extra whipped cream, obviously, because that's the only way to drink hot chocolate. Lily took the cup reverently, her eyes wide. Thank you. And this is for you. Sophia handed Jake the second cup. Black coffee with 1 sugar.
I texted you yesterday asking how you take it, but you didn't answer, so I made an educated guess based on the grumpy mechanic demographic. Jake laughed. Grumpy mechanic demographic? Too harsh? I can go with ruggedly thoughtful instead. That's worse. Noted. Sophia grinned at him, and Jake felt that flip in his stomach again, stronger this time. They walked to a nearby park, Lily running ahead to the playground while Jake and Sophia settled on a bench with sight lines to the swings. The afternoon was crisp and clear, one of those rare Portland November days when the rain took a break and the light turned everything golden. So, how have you been? Good, same as always. Work, Lily, sleep, repeat. You? I've been thinking about your house. Something in her tone made Jake turn to look at her. Not in a creepy way, just it felt different there. Quiet in a good way. Like the world couldn't reach you. That's kind of the point. After Lily's mom left, I needed somewhere that felt contained, I guess. Manageable. Sophia nodded, staring at her coffee. My life is the opposite of contained right now. My parents keep calling asking when I'm going to focus more on the family business. My assistant thinks I work too much. And my colleagues... She stopped. The woman who left me at that gas station texted me the next day like nothing happened. No apology, no acknowledgement, just, hey, want to grab lunch? What did you say? I didn't answer. Sophia looked at him. I think I'm starting to realize I've been surrounding myself with people who don't actually see me.
They see the version of me that's convenient, the one who doesn't make waves or ask for too much or expect people to follow through. Jake understood that more than he wanted to admit. Sometimes it's easier to be invisible than to protect yourself from being seen and rejected. Yeah, exactly. Sophia's voice was quiet, and in it Jake heard the loneliness that matched his own, the weight of trying to be enough while making yourself small enough not to be a burden. Lily came running over, breathless and pink-cheeked. Daddy, can Sophia push me on the swings? Please? If she wants to. Jake glanced at Sophia. I would love to push you on the swings, but I'm warning you now, I'm going to make airplane noises the whole time. Yay! Lily grabbed Sophia's hand and dragged her toward the swing set, and Jake watched them go with something that felt dangerously close to contentment settling in his chest. They stayed at the park for almost 2 hours. Sophia pushed Lily on the swings, helped her navigate the climbing wall, sat in the sandbox making elaborate castles while Jake watched from the bench. And when Lily asked if Sophia could come over for dinner, Jake found himself saying yes before he could think better of it. Dinner was spaghetti, the one thing Jake could make reliably without burning, and Sophia set the table while Lily told her elaborate stories about her stuffed animals' various adventures. They ate like a family, comfortable and easy, and Jake kept waiting for the moment when reality would intrude, when he'd remember all the reasons this couldn't work. But that moment never came. After dinner, Sophia helped give Lily her bath. Another boundary crossed, another piece of normal domestic life that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. She read Lily bedtime stories in different voices, making his daughter giggle until she had hiccups. And when Lily finally fell asleep, Sophia and Jake stood in the doorway together, watching her breathe. She's incredible. You've done such a good job with her. Sophia whispered it, her shoulder almost touching Jake's. Thanks. She's pretty much my whole world. They moved to the living room, settling at opposite ends of the couch with careful space between them. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of rain starting up again outside. Can I ask you something? Sophia said it after a while,
her voice soft in the dimness. "Seems to be the theme tonight." She smiled, but it faded quickly. "Are you lonely?" The question hit harder than Jake expected. No one had asked him that before, not directly, not with that much genuine curiosity and care. "Yeah. Most days, yeah." "Me too. Even surrounded by people all the time."
Maybe especially then. They sat in that shared admission for a moment, the weight of it settling between them like something solid and real. Jake knew he should say something to lighten the mood, to step back from whatever edge they were approaching, but he was tired of stepping back, tired of protecting himself from connection. "You can come back, anytime you want. Lily would love it, and He stopped, made himself say it. "I would too." Sophia turned to look at him, and in her eyes, Jake saw the same fear and hope and desperate wanting that he felt. "Yeah?" "Yeah." She moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Jake could feel the warmth of her, could smell whatever soap or shampoo she used, something clean and simple that reminded him of rain. "What are we doing?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." They didn't kiss, didn't cross that line. Not yet, but they sat there on the couch until almost midnight, talking about everything and nothing. Sophia's work, Jake's plans for the shop, the small moments that make up a life, the big questions that never get answered. And when Sophia finally left, stepping out into the rain with a promise to come back next weekend, Jake stood in the doorway and watched her go, with the knowledge that his carefully contained world was cracking open. And for the first time in 7 years, he wasn't afraid of what might get in. Sophia started coming over every weekend after that. She'd show up Saturday morning with art supplies for Lily, or coffee for Jake, or sometimes just herself. Showing up being enough. She became part of their rhythm, woven into the fabric of their modest life in ways that felt both sudden and inevitable. She brought color to the house, literally and figuratively. Art projects covered the kitchen table. Lily's drawings multiplied across the refrigerator. Sophia taught his daughter about primary colors and negative space, and how to see the world like an artist, all the shapes and shadows and light that most people missed. But it was the small things that undid Jake. The way Sophia remembered how he took his coffee, the way she'd help with dishes without being asked, the way she'd sprawl on the living room floor with Lily, completely unself-conscious, laughing like she'd never been told she was supposed to be dignified, the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, with something that made his breath catch and his carefully maintained walls tremble. They were careful, though, always careful. They didn't touch more than was necessary, didn't let their conversations drift too far into dangerous territory, maintained the fiction that this was just friendship, just kindness, just two lonely people finding comfort in each other's company. The fiction lasted almost a month before it shattered completely. It was a Friday night, not their usual routine, but Sophia had texted saying she'd had a horrible day and could she please just come hide in his living room for a while. Jake said yes, because he always said yes to her now. When she showed up an hour later, her eyes were red and her hands were shaking worse than the night they'd met. "What happened?" Jake pulled her inside, his protective instincts firing on all cylinders. "I got into a fight with my father." Sophia's voice was unsteady, each word seeming to cost her something. "He called to tell me he's cutting my autonomy at the company unless I start acting more like the executive he raised me to be. Said independence is fine for art students,
not for someone being groomed to run a $50 million empire. And he's not watching me waste my potential on... She stopped, her jaw working. On what? On distractions. That's what he called it. My life outside the office. This.
She gestured vaguely at Jake's house, at him, at everything they'd been building. Jake didn't think. He just reached for her, pulled her into his arms, and let her press her face against his chest. She clutched his shirt like she was drowning, and he was the only solid thing left in the world. And Jake held her and thought about all the ways people could break you by loving you wrong. You're not wasting your potential. You're not a distraction. Anyone who can't see how much light you bring to everything you touch is blind. Sophia pulled back just enough to look up at him, tears still streaming down her face.
How do you do that?
Do what?
Make me feel like I matter. Like I'm not just... like I'm enough, exactly as I am.
Because you are. You are enough, Sophia. More than enough. And then, somehow, Jake was never quite sure who moved first. They were kissing. Soft at first, tentative, like they were both waiting for the other person to pull away. But neither of them did. The kiss deepened, became something desperate and honest and 3 months overdue. Sophia's hands tangled in Jake's hair, and he pulled her closer, trying to close a distance that had nothing to do with physical space. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jake's first thought was, Lily's asleep down the hall, followed immediately by, this changes everything, followed by, I don't care. We shouldn't, Sophia started, but Jake cut her off with another kiss, softer this time. Probably not, but I'm tired of shouldn't. They moved to the couch, tangled together in ways that felt both new and familiar, and they kissed until Jake's jaw ached and Sophia's lips were swollen and the rain outside had turned from drizzle to downpour. They didn't go further than that, not with Lily in the house, not yet, but what they had was enough, more than enough. I should go. Sophia whispered it eventually, though she made no move to leave his arms. You should stay, Jake countered, and meant it in ways that had nothing to do with tonight. Jake, I know this is complicated. I know you're younger than me and in a completely different place in your life. I know I come with a kid and a mortgage and more baggage than anyone should have to deal with. But Sophia, he made himself say it. I'm falling for you. Have been since the night you knocked on my door. And I need you to know that before we go any further. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing absent patterns on his shoulder. My whole life, people have told me who I should be. My parents want me to be successful and ruthless. My colleagues want me to be compliant and professional. My father wants me to be talented and dedicated, and I've spent so much energy trying to be all those things that I forgot to figure out who I actually am. She looked up at him. But when I'm here with you and Lily, I don't feel like I have to be anything except myself. And that's terrifying, because I'm not sure I know who that is yet. But it's also the only place I want to be. So stay. Jake said it again, putting everything into those 2 words. It's not that simple. My father, if he knew about you, about us, he'd lose his mind. Single father, mechanic in his 30s, that's not exactly what he had planned for me. And what about what you have planned for you? Sophia smiled, sad and honest. I'm working on that part. She left shortly after, promising to text when she got home,
And Jake lay awake most of the night, thinking about the way she'd felt in his arms, the way she'd kissed him like he was air and she'd been drowning, the way his whole life had rearranged itself around this woman who'd shown up shivering on his doorstep 12 weeks ago. He was in trouble. Deep, complicated, probably going to end badly trouble. But when his phone buzzed at 1:43 in the morning with a text that just said, "I'm falling too," Jake smiled in the darkness and thought that maybe trouble was worth it. The next few weeks existed in a strange, suspended reality. Sophia came over more often, sometimes on weekends, sometimes stealing away for a few hours on weekday evenings, always fitting herself into the spaces of Jake's life with an ease that should have been impossible, but somehow wasn't. They were careful around Lily, never more than friendly in front of her, but the current between them was impossible to ignore. Every accidental touch lingered. Every shared look carried weight. They were two people trying to pretend they weren't falling in love while actively tumbling headfirst. Sophia met Lily's teacher at pickup one day when she happened to be visiting. Mrs. Rodriguez assumed she was Jake's girlfriend, and he didn't correct her. Just let Sophia handle the assumption with grace and warmth, and that smile that made his chest tight. She came to Lily's school winter performance and cheered louder than anyone else when his daughter remembered all the words to Jingle Bells. She helped Jake fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom, holding the flashlight while he worked, and they ended up kissing in the hallway after, wet and laughing and covered in rust. She was becoming essential. That was the dangerous part. Jake had built his life to be self-sufficient, to need nothing he couldn't provide for himself and Lily. But Sophia was threading herself through their days in ways that were becoming structural, load-bearing. He didn't know how they'd hold themselves up if she left. He tried not to think about that. Tried to just live in the moment, take what joy he could from the time they had. But in the quiet moments, late at night when Lily was asleep and the house was still, doubt crept in. Sophia was young and brilliant, with her whole career stretching out ahead of her. What was she doing playing house with a mechanic who could barely afford to take her to dinner? How long until she realized she could do better, be with someone who matched her potential instead of someone who'd already peaked at 34? He never said any of this out loud, but Sophia must have sensed something because she started bringing it up in sideways ways, asking about his dreams, what he wanted from life beyond survival, telling him about her work, her bosses, her complicated relationship with her career and her future. Testing, maybe, to see if they could bridge the gap between their worlds. "What would you do if money wasn't an issue?" she asked it one Saturday afternoon while Lily napped. They were on the couch again, their spot now, the place where most of their important conversations happened. Jake was holding her loosely, one arm around her shoulders, trying not to think too hard about how natural this felt. "Honestly, I'd probably still be a mechanic. I like fixing things, taking something broken and making it work again. There's something satisfying about that." He paused. "But maybe I'd have my own shop, not working for someone else. Build something that was mine, that I could leave to Lily someday." Sophia tilted her head back to look at him. "Why haven't you?" "Because dreams require capital and time and risk, and I have a 7-year-old who needs stability more than I need to chase maybes." "That's very responsible." Her tone was careful. "But I wonder if you've convinced yourself you don't deserve more than just getting by. If you've made peace with small, not because it's what you want, but because it's what feels safe." Jake didn't have an answer for that. Maybe because she was right. Maybe because he'd stopped dreaming the day Sarah walked out, decided that wanting more was what got you hurt. "What about you? What do you want?" Sophia was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm. I want to make a difference. Not just move money around or close deals. I want to build something that matters. Something real that says... She stopped, searching. That says, here's what it feels like to believe in community. Here's what it feels like to care about people more than profit. I want to create value out of the hard parts. Make housing accessible instead of exclusive. You will. Jake said it with absolute certainty. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you already are. Every time you choose integrity over easy money.
She kissed him then, slow and deep, and Jake thought about the different kinds of success, the spreadsheets and portfolios and financial markers, yes, but also the way people could rebuild themselves, the way kindness could transform strangers into family, the way love could happen when you weren't even looking for it. They were in the middle of that kiss when Lily's voice came from the hallway. Daddy, Sophia, I'm hungry. They broke apart, laughing, and Jake went to make his daughter a snack while Sophia stayed on the couch. When he came back, Lily was curled up next to Sophia, showing her a book about dinosaurs, and Sophia was listening with complete focus, asking questions about velociraptors and triceratops, like this was the most important conversation she'd ever have. Jake stood in the doorway watching them, and he felt his heart crack open with the terrible knowledge that he'd already lost the ability to protect himself from this. He loved them both, his daughter and this woman who'd walked into their lives by accident, and there was no taking that back now. Whatever came next, whatever price he'd have to pay for these borrowed moments, it was already too late to save himself. He was all in, whether he wanted to be or not. December arrived with its cold bite and early darkness, and Sophia's presence in Jake's house became less like visiting and more like coming home. She had a toothbrush in the bathroom now, a drawer with spare clothes, a favorite mug that Lily had picked out for her at the thrift store, bright yellow with a chipped handle that Sophia refused to let Jake replace. It's perfect because it's imperfect. That's the whole point. She'd said it while cradling the mug like something precious, and Jake had understood that she wasn't just talking about dishware. She'd started bringing her laptop over, working remotely some afternoons, setting up in the corner of the living room where the light came through the window just right. Lily would sit beside her, working on drawings, and Jake would pretend to read the paper while actually watching them, the way Sophia's face went soft and focused when she reviewed contracts, the way she'd pause to help Lily mix colors or show her how to hold a pencil, the way she'd glance up sometimes and catch him staring and smile like she knew exactly what he was thinking. They still hadn't told Lily what was happening between them. Jake wasn't sure how to explain something he barely understood himself. What were they? Dating felt too casual for the way Sophia had woven herself into every corner of his life. Partners felt presumptuous for a relationship that was still so new, still so fragile. But Lily was 7, not stupid. She'd started calling Sophia at bedtime when Sophia wasn't there, insisting that Jake put her on speaker so she could say goodnight. She'd draw pictures of the three of them, stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun, and tape them to the refrigerator with the unself-conscious certainty of a child who didn't yet know that families came in wrong shapes. And one morning, while Jake was making breakfast, Lily had looked up from her cereal. Is Sophia going to live here forever? Jake had frozen, spatula in hand, trying to find an answer that was honest without being painful. Would you want that? Duh, Daddy. Lily rolled her eyes with the exasperation only a first grader could muster. She's the best. And you smile more when she's here. You didn't used to smile that much. Out of the mouths of babes.
Jake had changed the subject, but the question had lodged itself in his chest like a splinter.
Would Sophia live here forever? Could she? Did she even want to? They'd been careful not to talk about the future, both of them dancing around the elephant in the room, the fact that Sophia's world and Jake's world existed in different orbits, connected only by the temporary gravity of whatever this was between them. She'd move on eventually to whatever came next, and Jake would still be here in this worn-down house, fixing transmissions and raising his daughter, and remembering what it felt like to believe in possibilities. But then came the afternoon that changed everything. Jake was at the shop, 3 knuckles deep in an oil change, when his phone rang. Sophia's name flashed on the screen, and he almost didn't answer. His hands were covered in grease, and he was behind schedule. But something made him wipe his fingers on his coveralls and pick up. Hey, everything okay? Can I come over? Sophia's voice was tight, controlled in a way that meant she was barely holding it together. I know it's Thursday and we usually wait until the weekend, but I just need to see you. Of course, I'll be home by 6. Do you need me to come sooner? No, 6 is fine. She stopped, and Jake heard her take a shaky breath. Thank you. She hung up before he could ask what was wrong, and Jake spent the next 3 hours working on autopilot, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Was she hurt? Sick? Had something happened at work? He picked Lily up from after-school care at 5:30, drove home with his daughter chattering about her day while his thoughts spiraled, and pulled into the driveway to find Sophia's car already parked on the street. She was sitting on his porch steps, her arms wrapped around her knees, and even from the car, Jake could see the defeated slope of her shoulders. Sophia! Lily bolted from the car before Jake had fully put it in park, throwing herself at Sophia with the uncomplicated affection of childhood. You're here! Are you staying for dinner? Can we make cookies? Sophia caught Lily, held her tight, and when she looked up at Jake over his daughter's head, her eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. Hey, sweetheart. Cookies sound perfect, but first, can you go inside and draw me a picture of Mr. Whiskers? I want to hang it in my office, but it has to be really special. Lily, easily redirected by the promise of an important artistic mission, nodded seriously and ran inside. Sophia stood slowly, and Jake closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms without a word. She collapsed against him, her fingers clutching his shirt, and he could feel the tremors running through her. What happened? He asked it quietly, his lips against her hair. My father found out about you. Jake's stomach dropped. How? My assistant told. Sophia's laugh was bitter. Apparently she's been concerned about my choices lately. Thought they should know I was spending all my time with a single father instead of focusing on my career. Very thoughtful of her. Sophia, they want to meet you. She pulled back enough to look at him, and Jake saw fear in her eyes, raw and honest. Tomorrow. They're driving up from Lake Oswego and they want to have dinner with us. All of us. You, me, Lily. They said... Her voice cracked. They said they want to see what I've been choosing over my future. Jake felt anger spike hot in his chest, not at Sophia, never at Sophia, but at the people who'd raised her to believe that love was something you had to choose over everything else, that happiness came with prerequisites. Okay, we'll have dinner with them. Jake, you don't understand. My father, he's not going to be nice about this. He's going to look at your house and your job and your life, and he's going to... She stopped, her jaw clenching. He's going to try to make me feel ashamed.
And the worst part is, it might work. Then we won't let it work. Jake cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. I'm not ashamed of my life. I'm not ashamed of my daughter, or my house, or the fact that I fix cars for a living. And if your parents can't see past that to who you are when you're here, to how happy you are, then that's their failure, not ours. Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. What if I'm not strong enough to stand up to them? You are. You walked away from a life that was killing you and knocked on a stranger's door in the rain. You already did the hard part. This is just telling them about it.
She kissed him then, desperate and grateful, and Jake poured everything he couldn't say into that kiss. All his fear and hope and fierce determination to protect this thing they'd built, this fragile, beautiful thing that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Lily's voice called from inside. I'm done with the picture! They broke apart, both breathing hard. We can do this. Sophia whispered it, more to herself than to him. We can do this. Jake agreed and prayed he was right. The Friday evening arrived with the inevitability of a storm you could see building on the horizon. Jake cleaned the house top to bottom, not because he thought it would make a difference, but because he needed to do something with his hands, needed to feel like he had some control over what was about to happen. Sophia showed up at 4 with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Jake made in a day, her hands shaking as she set it on the counter. They'll be here at 6. My mother texted that they made good time. Because of course they did. Heaven forbid they be late to judge my life choices. Hey. Jake caught her hand, pulled her close. Whatever happens, we're going to get through it. You, me, and Lily. That's what matters. What if they don't approve? Then they don't approve. It doesn't change anything. But even as he said it, Jake knew he was lying. Of course it changed things. Sophia was still tied to her parents in ways that mattered, still dependent on their approval in ways she was just beginning to recognize. If they cut her off, if they made her choose between her family and this relationship, Jake didn't know what she'd do. Didn't know what he'd want her to do. Lily, blissfully unaware of the tension, was excited about having guests. She'd insisted on wearing her favorite dress, the purple one with the stars, and had arranged all her stuffed animals on the couch in what she called a fancy welcome party. She kept asking why Sophia seemed sad, and Jake kept deflecting. And by the time 6 o'clock rolled around, his nerves were stretched so tight he thought they might snap. The knock, when it came, sounded like a judge's gavel. Jake opened the door to find 2 people who looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog for successful upper-class living. Sophia's father was tall and severe in an expensive overcoat, his gray hair perfectly styled, his eyes cold and assessing as they swept over Jake's face, his clothes, the house visible behind him. Sophia's mother was elegant in that brittle way some women achieved, designer haircut, tasteful jewelry, smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mr. and Mrs. Lancaster, I'm Jake Morrison. Please come in. Richard Lancaster's handshake was perfunctory, his grip just short of aggressive. Mr. Morrison. He stepped inside, his gaze cataloging everything, the worn furniture, the crayon drawings on the walls, the toys scattered despite Jake's best efforts to clean. This is quite a place you have here. It wasn't a compliment. Daddy, who are they? Lily appeared in the hallway, Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest, and Jake saw something flicker across Margaret Lancaster's face. Not warmth exactly, but a crack in the armor. This is Sophia's mom and dad. Remember, the ones coming for dinner?
Oh! Lily's face lit up. She ran to Sophia, who'd been standing frozen in the kitchen doorway, and grabbed her hand. They're here to meet us! You didn't tell me your mom was so pretty. Margaret blinked, clearly not expecting to be complimented by a 7-year-old. Thank you, dear. What's your name? Lily Marie Morrison. And this is Mr. Whiskers. He's a cat, but he's also my best friend. Sophia helped me make him a scarf last week.
See? She held up the stuffed animal proudly, displaying the tiny knitted scarf in bright green yarn. That's lovely. Margaret's voice held something almost genuine, and for a moment, Jake thought maybe this wouldn't be as bad as he'd feared. Dinner was excruciating. Jake had made pot roast, one of the few dishes he could actually cook well, and Sophia had brought a salad. They sat around Jake's small kitchen table, Lily chattering obliviously while the adults navigated a conversation mined with unspoken judgments and careful politeness. Richard asked about Jake's work with the tone of someone asking about a particularly unpleasant medical condition. So you're a mechanic. Is that what you've always done? I went to college for a couple years, engineering. But my daughter was born and I needed steady income, so I took a job at the shop. Turns out I'm good at it. But you didn't finish your degree. No, sir, I didn't. Richard's eyes were sharp, assessing. And Lily's mother, Sophia mentioned she's not in the picture. She left 7 years ago. Jake kept his voice neutral, aware of Lily listening even as she pushed peas around her plate. It's just Lily and me now. That must be difficult. Margaret's tone was almost sympathetic. Raising a child alone while working full-time. We manage. Lily's happy. That's what matters. Is it? Richard set down his fork with deliberate precision. Because from where I'm sitting, Mr. Morrison, it looks like you're just getting by. And now my daughter has gotten herself tangled up in your situation, playing house with someone else's child, wasting her time and talent on, he gestured vaguely at the room, on this. Dad, Sophia's voice was quiet but sharp. Don't. Don't what? Tell the truth? Sophia, you're 28 years old. You're supposed to be building a future, not babysitting for a man who's got more baggage than prospects. Jake felt his jaw clench, but before he could respond, Lily spoke up, her voice small but clear. Sophia's not babysitting. She's our friend. And she loves us. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily looked around the table, confused by the sudden tension, and Sophia reached over to take her hand. That's right, sweetheart. I do love you. Sophia, we need to talk. Richard stood abruptly. Outside. Now. Margaret touched her husband's arm. Richard, maybe we should... Now. Sophia looked at Jake, and he could see her wavering, the old pattern of accommodation and fear warring with the person she was trying to become. Jake wanted to tell her to stay, to stand her ground, but he also knew this was her choice to make, her fight. Okay. She stood, squeezed Lily's hand once more, and followed her parents out to the porch, leaving Jake and Lily alone in the kitchen. Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide and worried. Did I say something wrong? No, baby, you said exactly the right thing. Jake pulled her into his lap, holding her close. Through the window, Jake could see Sophia and her parents on the porch. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see Richard gesturing sharply, Sophia's shoulders hunching, Margaret standing slightly apart with her arms crossed. The body language told him everything he needed to know. This was a fight Sophia wasn't winning. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Lily had fallen asleep against Jake's chest,
exhausted by the emotion she didn't fully understand when the front door finally opened. But only Sophia's parents came back inside. Jake's blood went cold. "Where's Sophia?" Richard's face was stone. "In the car. We're leaving, and Sophia won't be coming back." "What did you say to her?" "We explained reality." Richard's voice was clipped.
That she has 6 months until her contract review, and she needs to focus on her career, not fantasies with a mechanic who can barely provide for his own child. We're limiting her company credit cards, and she'll be moving back to the estate after her next performance evaluation if things don't improve. You can't. She's an adult. You can't force her. I can make her life very difficult if she chooses to defy me, and I will. I'm not going to stand by and watch my daughter throw away her potential on some fantasy of domestic bliss with a man who has nothing to offer her. Margaret at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Mr. Morrison, please understand. We only want what's best for Sophia." "No." Jake's voice was low and dangerous. "You want what's easiest for you. What looks good on your Christmas card. You don't care what makes her happy." "Happiness is not the same as security. Sophia will thank us for this someday." They left without another word, and Jake stood in his doorway holding his sleeping daughter, watching the sleek sedan pull away with Sophia in the back seat. He caught one glimpse of her face through the window, stricken, devastated, looking back at him like someone being dragged underwater before they turned the corner and disappeared. Jake carried Lily to bed, tucked her in with Mr. Whiskers, and sat on the edge of her mattress for a long time, just watching her sleep. His phone buzzed with a text, and his heart leapt until he saw it was from an unknown number. "This is Richard Lancaster. Delete Sophia's contact. If you attempt to reach my daughter again, I will pursue legal action for harassment. Stay away from her, or I will make your life and your daughter's life very difficult." Jake stared at the message until his vision blurred. Then he threw his phone across the room and put his head in his hands and tried to remember how to breathe. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Jake's life. He went through the motions: work, Lily, sleep, repeat. But everything felt muted, colorless, like the world had been drained of something essential. Lily kept asking for Sophia, why she didn't come over anymore, and Jake kept lying. "She's busy with work. She'll visit soon. Don't worry." Until finally, Willie stopped asking and just drew sad pictures of a girl with dark hair who was always walking away. Jake tried to give Sophia space, tried to respect whatever choice she'd made that night, but every time his phone rang, his heart jumped. Every time the door knocked, he hoped. And every night he lay awake wondering if she was okay, if she was thinking about him, if she regretted what they'd almost had. He almost called her a dozen times, typed out messages he never sent, drove past the Lancaster and Associates building once, and hated himself for it. He was a 34-year-old man pining like a teenager, and the worst part was he couldn't even be angry with her. She'd been backed into a corner by people who were supposed to love her, forced to choose between her heart and her survival. What was she supposed to do? But anger came anyway, hot and bitter and directed at himself, for letting himself believe this could work, for opening his heart when he knew better, for dragging Lily into it, letting her get attached to someone who was never going to stay. He'd failed his daughter again, let hope override common sense, and now they were both paying the price. December rolled into January. Portland's rain turned relentless, the kind of cold wet that soaked into your bones and stayed there. Jake threw himself into work, taking extra shifts, staying late to avoid going home to the house that felt too empty now. His boss asked if he was okay, and Jake lied. Mrs. Henderson asked where that nice young woman had gone, and Jake changed the subject. Even Lily's teacher pulled him aside after pickup one day, concerned about his daughter's recent drawings, all those pictures of people walking away. "Is everything all right at home?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked it gently, her eyes kind but worried. "We're fine, just some changes. We'll be okay." But he wasn't sure he believed it. On a Tuesday evening in late January, Jake was making dinner, mac and cheese from a box because he couldn't summon the energy for anything more complicated, when Lily came into the kitchen holding one of the pictures Sophia had drawn for her, a watercolor of a garden, bright and alive with color. "I miss her, Daddy." The simple honesty of it broke something in Jake that had been holding together through sheer stubbornness. He knelt down to his daughter's level, pulled her into a hug, and let himself admit the truth. "I miss her too, baby. So much." "Is she ever coming back?" Jake wanted to say yes, wanted to promise that love was enough, that everything would work out, that people didn't just walk away from things that mattered. But he'd learned the hard way that promises were just words until someone chose to keep them. "I don't know. But I know she loved us. That was real, even if it's over." Lily nodded against his shoulder, her small arms tight around his neck, and they stayed like that until the water boiled over on the stove and the smoke alarm started beeping. That night, after Lily was asleep, Jake finally let himself look at the pictures on his phone, all the photos he'd taken over those few perfect months. Sophia covered in finger paint, laughing. Sophia and Lily making snow angels in the first snow of December. Sophia asleep on his couch, her face peaceful in the lamplight. Sophia looking at him with such open affection that it physically hurt to remember. He should delete them, should let himself move on, accept that this chapter had closed. But he couldn't make himself do it. Couldn't erase the evidence that she'd been here, that she'd mattered, that for a little while they'd been something close to a family. His phone buzzed with an email notification, and Jake almost ignored it, probably spam or a reminder from Lily's school about some upcoming event. But something made him check. It was from an address he didn't recognize, a random string of letters and numbers at a free email service. The subject line was blank. The body contained 2 words. "I'm sorry." Jake stared at those words until they blurred. Sorry for what? For leaving? For not fighting harder? For making him believe in something that couldn't last? He wanted to be angry, wanted to throw the phone again, wanted to feel anything except this hollowness that had taken up residence in his chest. Instead, he typed back 2 words of his own. "Me too." He hit send before he could overthink it, then set the phone down and went to the garage. It was almost midnight, but sleep felt impossible, so he did what he always did when the world got too heavy. He lost himself in the work. There was an old Chevy truck in the corner that he'd been restoring in his spare time, piece by piece, whenever he could afford the parts. It was the dream he'd told Sophia about, the someday that felt more possible when she was around to believe in it. Jake worked until his hands were filthy and his back ached, until the physical exhaustion might be enough to let him sleep, and when he finally headed inside at 3 a.m, his phone was dark and silent. Sophia's apology hanging in the digital ether, unanswered. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. Some distances were too far to cross. Some choices, once made, couldn't be unmade. Jake had learned that lesson before. He just hadn't expected to have to learn it again. But life, as it always did, continued. February arrived with its brief false promises of spring, then March with its rain and renewal.
Lily turned 8 with a small party in their backyard, just a few kids from school, cake from the grocery store, the kind of simple celebration that was all Jake could manage. His daughter blew out her candles and made a wish she wouldn't tell him, and Jake wondered if she was wishing for the same thing he was. The shop stayed busy. Bills got paid. Lily's drawing slowly started including other subjects besides the dark-haired woman who'd left. Jake even went on a date. Just one, set up by his boss's wife who was worried about him. A perfectly nice woman named Jennifer who taught 3rd grade and liked hiking and didn't understand why Jake kept checking his phone like he was waiting for a message that would never come. He didn't call her again, and she didn't call him. Some doors, once closed, needed to stay that way. Spring moved toward summer. Lily finished 2nd grade. Jake got a small promotion at the shop, not much, but enough that he could start saving again, putting money toward the dream of his own place someday. The Chevy truck in the garage was nearly finished, all its broken parts made whole again through patience and persistence and the kind of stubborn hope that refused to die no matter how hard reality tried to kill it. He was learning to live with the absence, the way you learn to live with any loss, by getting up every morning and putting one foot in front of the other, and trusting that eventually the weight would get lighter. It hadn't yet, but he kept walking anyway, for Lily, if not for himself. And then, on a humid evening in early May, when the Portland sky was finally more blue than gray, and Lily was playing in the sprinkler in their small backyard, Jake's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail, stayed safe in his carefully rebuilt routine, but something, instinct or foolishness, or that part of him that still believed in possibilities, made him swipe to accept. Hello? There was a pause, just long enough that Jake thought it might be a robocall. Then a voice he tried so hard to forget. Jake, it's me. It's Sophia. And just like that, the world tilted again. Jake's hand tightened around the phone, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't process the reality of hearing her voice again after nearly 5 months of silence. Lily's laughter drifted through the open window, and he stepped further into the house, away from the sound, needing space for whatever this conversation was about to become. Sophia, he managed finally, and her name tasted like something half-remembered, painful and sweet at the same time. I know I have no right to call. Her words came fast, nervous, like she was afraid he'd hang up before she could get them out. I know what my father said to you, and I know I should have reached out sooner, should have fought harder, should have... She stopped, and Jake heard her take a shaky breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for disappearing like that. Jake leaned against the kitchen counter, his free hand gripping the edge hard enough to hurt. What happened that night? After they took you? They drove me back to the estate and told me if I contacted you again, they'd cut me off completely. No more salary, no more position, nothing. My father said he'd make sure I couldn't advance in the industry, that I'd have wasted 8 years building my career for nothing. Sophia's voice cracked. And I believed him. I was so scared of losing everything I'd worked for that I folded. Like I always do. You were protecting yourself. I get it. The words felt like glass in Jake's mouth. Do you? Because I don't think I do anymore. There was something different in her voice now, something harder and more certain than the woman who'd let herself be led away that December night. I spent the last 5 months doing exactly what they wanted. I went to work, focused on metrics, stopped making waves, started acting like the executive they needed me to be. I applied for senior positions, smiled at family dinners, pretended I was fine with the life they'd planned for me. She paused. And you know what I realized?
Jake waited, afraid to breathe, afraid to hope. I realized that being safe isn't the same as being alive. That I was so busy protecting my career that I was destroying my present. That I gave up the only thing that ever made me feel real because I was too afraid to disappoint people who don't even see me. Sophia's voice steadied. I got my promotion yesterday. Senior Vice President, effective immediately. And the first thing I did, the very first thing after they announced it at the board meeting, was get in my car and drive to your shop. You came to the shop? Your boss said you'd left for the day. He looked at me like he knew exactly who I was and wasn't sure whether to tell me where to find you or call security. A ghost of a laugh. I didn't know if you'd moved, if you'd want to hear from me, if I'd burned everything so completely that there was nothing left to salvage. But I had to try. I had to at least tell you that I was wrong, that I'm sorry, that not a single day has gone by when I haven't thought about you and Lily and that house that felt more like home than anywhere I've ever lived. Jake closed his eyes, emotion threatening to choke him. Sophia, Wait, please let me finish. She was crying now. He could hear it. I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect you to forgive me or take me back or even want to see me. I just needed you to know that what we had was real, that it mattered, that you and Lily changed my life in ways I'm still figuring out how to articulate, and that I'm done living according to someone else's definition of success. I'm done choosing safe over honest. Where are you right now? Jake asked it quietly, his heart pounding against his ribs. In my car. Parked about 3 blocks from your house because I'm too scared to actually knock on your door. Jake felt something break open in his chest, grief and anger, and a hope so fierce it terrified him. Are you still on Maple Street? At the corner by the big oak tree? How did you? Yes, I'm at the corner. Stay there. I'm coming to you. He hung up before she could respond, called to Lily that he'd be right back, and walked out the front door without letting himself think about what he was doing. If he thought about it, he'd talk himself out of it, would remember all the reasons this was a bad idea, all the ways she'd hurt him, all the promises she'd broken without ever actually making them. But his feet kept moving anyway, carrying him down the sidewalk toward the corner where a sedan sat with its engine running. He could see her silhouette through the windshield, her hands on the steering wheel, her head bowed like she was praying or gathering courage, or both. Jake stopped a few feet from the driver's side door and waited. After a moment, Sophia looked up, and even through the glass and the fading evening light, he could see her eyes were red and swollen. She turned off the engine and got out slowly, like she was afraid any sudden movement might make him disappear. They stood there on the sidewalk, 5 feet and 5 months between them, and Jake let himself really look at her. She was thinner than he remembered, her face drawn with exhaustion and something that looked like hard-won clarity. She'd cut her hair shorter, and she was wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of the business attire he'd grown accustomed to. She looked older, sadder, real in a way she hadn't been before, like suffering had stripped away the last of her pretense. Hi. Sophia's voice was soft, her hands twisting together in front of her. Hi, Jake replied, and his voice came out rougher than he'd intended. I know I hurt you. I know I hurt Lily. And I know sorry isn't enough, will never be enough. But I am so... Her voice broke. I am so sorry, Jake. For all of it. For being too weak to fight for us. For letting them take me away. For disappearing like what we had meant nothing when it meant everything. Jake felt 5 months of hurt and loneliness and anger rise up in his throat, demanding to be voiced. Do you have any idea what it was like? Watching them drive you away and not being able to do anything about it? Trying to explain to Lily why you weren't coming back? Wondering every single day if you were okay, if you were thinking about us, if you regretted. He stopped, dragged a hand through his hair. I thought I'd learned my lesson about getting attached, about letting people in. And then you showed up and you made me believe again. And then you left. And He couldn't finish the sentence. I know. Sophia whispered it. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Jake, I'm here now. I'm choosing you now. I know it's late. I know I should have been braver 5 months ago. But I'm trying to be brave now. What changed? Why now? Why not in February or March or any of the dozens of days when Lily asked where you were and I had to lie to her? Sophia flinched like he'd slapped her, but she didn't look away. Because I was still scared. Still trapped in this idea that I needed my parents' approval to exist, that I couldn't survive without their support and their version of success. But the promotion did something to me. I worked so hard for it, sacrificed so much, and when they finally gave it to me, I realized they didn't win. They broke something. They took the person I was becoming and they crushed her back into the box they'd built. Her jaw clenched, and I let them. I chose fear over love, and I've been paying for that choice every single day since. And now? Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. Now I'm done paying. Done choosing their expectations over my happiness. I told my father this morning that I'm keeping the title, but renegotiating my contract for more autonomy, cutting ties with his control, and figuring out my own path, even if it means struggle and uncertainty and all the things they've spent 28 years protecting me from. She took a step closer. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know you have every right to tell me to leave and never come back. But I had to try. Had to tell you that I choose you, Jake. You and Lily. I would rather struggle with you than succeed with anyone else, because you see me in ways no one else ever has. Jake stood there, letting her words wash over him, feeling the walls he'd built start to crack. He wanted to believe her, wanted to pull her into his arms and pretend the last 5 months hadn't happened, that they could just pick up where they'd left off. But he had Lily to think about now. Had to be sure this time. Had to know that Sophia wouldn't run again the next time things got hard. I need to know you're serious. That this isn't just promotion emotions or rebellion against your parents or some temporary crisis that'll fade once reality sets in. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled. Because Lily got attached to you, Sophia. She drew pictures of you for months. She asked me every single night when you were coming back, and I had to watch her face fall every time I said I didn't know. And I can't, I won't put her through that again unless I'm sure you're staying. I'm sure. Sophia's response came without hesitation. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I know I have to earn your trust back. I know it's not going to be easy. But I'm not running anymore, Jake. I'm done running. What about money? Your parents, if they really follow through on limiting your access. I have my salary. It's mine, not theirs. And I have savings they don't know about. I'm not asking you to take care of me or fix my life. I'm just asking for a chance to be part of yours again. Jake looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth in her eyes, saw the fear and the hope and the desperate courage it had taken to drive here, to risk this rejection, to choose uncertainty over comfort. And he thought about the last 5 months, about the hollow ache of missing her, about Lily's sad drawings and his own sleepless nights.
Thought about how his house had felt empty, even though nothing had changed except her absence. Lily's in the backyard, playing in the sprinkler. She doesn't know you're here. Sophia's face crumpled with hope and terror combined. Can I see her? I need to talk to her first. Prepare her. She's been through enough already. Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. Come back in an hour. If she wants to see you, we'll figure out the rest from there. But Sophia, if you do this, if you walk back into her life, you have to be all in. Not just for now, not just until it gets hard again, but for real. She can't lose you twice. I won't let her. I won't let either of you. Not again. The promise hung in the air between them, fragile and vital as breath. Jake nodded and turned to walk back to his house, but Sophia's voice stopped him.
Ryan, she caught herself.
Jake, thank you for not slamming the door in my face, for giving me a chance to explain, for everything. Jake didn't trust himself to speak, so he just nodded again and continued walking, his heart pounding, his mind racing with all the ways this could go wrong and the small, stubborn part of him that still believed it might go right. He found Lily in the backyard, soaking wet and delighted, chasing the sprinkler in circles. When she saw him, she ran over, dripping and breathless. "Daddy, did you see? I can jump through the water without getting scared." "I saw, baby. You're very brave." Jake crouched down to her level, suddenly unsure how to begin this conversation. How did you explain to an 8-year-old that the person she'd loved and lost might be coming back? How did you prepare her for the possibility of heartbreak again? "Hey, can we talk for a minute?" Lily's face grew serious the way it always did when she sensed something important was coming. "Okay." They sat together on the back steps, Lily wrapped in a towel, and Jake struggled to find the right words. "Do you remember Sophia?" Lily's whole body went still. "The girl who went away?" "Yeah, that one. She called me today. She wants to see you again." Lily stared at him, her eyes huge and disbelieving. "Really?" "Really. She's been gone for a while because she had some grown-up things she needed to figure out. But she says she's ready to come back now if you want her to." "Why did she leave?" Lily's voice was small, and Jake heard all the hurt she'd been carrying compressed into those 4 words. "Because she was scared. Sometimes people get scared and they make mistakes. She made a big mistake leaving the way she did, and she knows that. She wants to tell you she's sorry and see if maybe you can forgive her." Lily was quiet for a long moment, her small fingers playing with the edge of the towel. "Did she forget about us?" "No, sweetheart. She never forgot about us. She thought about us every day." "Then why didn't she come back sooner?" It was the same question Jake had asked, and he gave Lily the same answer Sophia had given him. Because sometimes being brave takes time to learn, and Sophia's learning now. Lily looked up at him with those eyes that were too wise for 8 years. "Do you want her to come back?" Jake felt his chest tighten. "I think so. But it doesn't matter what I want. What matters is what you want. This is your choice too." Lily thought about it, her face serious with concentration. Then she nodded slowly. "I want to see her. But Daddy, if she leaves again, I'm going to be really sad." "I know, baby." Jake pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her damp hair. "Me too. That's why we're going to be careful this time. We're going to make sure she's really staying before we let ourselves believe it completely. Okay?" "Okay." Lily's voice was steady, trusting. Can I wear my purple dress? The one with the stars? Jake laughed despite himself. Sure, kiddo. Let's get you cleaned up. The next hour passed in a blur of nervous preparation. Lily insisted on combing her hair 3 times and changed her mind twice about whether to bring Mr. Whiskers. Jake straightened the house, even though it was already clean, made coffee, even though his hands were shaking too much to drink it, checked the clock every 30 seconds like it might speed time up or slow it down through sheer force of will. When the knock finally came, soft and hesitant, Lily looked at Jake with sudden terror. What if she's different? Then we'll figure it out. Together. He took her hand and opened the door.
Sophia stood there holding a small succulent in a ceramic pot, something green and growing, a peace offering or a promise, or both. She looked at Lily and her face transformed, tears spilling over before she could stop them.
Hi, Lily.
Her voice was barely a whisper. Lily stood frozen for a moment, caught between wanting to run forward and wanting to protect herself from being hurt again. Then, with a decision that seemed to surprise even her, she let go of Jake's hand and walked slowly toward Sophia.
You came back.
It wasn't quite a question. I came back, and I am so sorry for leaving. I made a really big mistake and I hurt you, and I understand if you're mad at me. Sophia knelt down to Lily's eye level, setting the plant aside. Lily studied her face with that unnerving directness children have.
My daddy says you were scared.
I was. Really scared. But being scared isn't an excuse for hurting people you love. Do you still love us? Lily asked, and the question hung in the air like something fragile and vital. Yes. I never stopped. Not for a single second. Lily nodded slowly, processing this. Then she said something that made both adults' breath catch.
I made you something. Wait here.
She ran back into the house, leaving Jake and Sophia alone on the porch. Sophia stood, cradling the plant, and looked at Jake with eyes that held everything she couldn't say. She's grown. Even in 5 months, she's taller. Sophia whispered it like an observation of all the moments she'd missed. Yeah, kids do that. Lily returned, carrying a piece of paper carefully folded. She handed it to Sophia with ceremony. I made this a long time ago. I was going to give it to you when you came back. Sophia unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, the colors bright and hopeful. Across the top in Lily's careful 2nd grade printing. Our family. Sophia pressed the drawing to her chest like it was the most precious thing she'd ever received. And when she looked at Lily again, she was crying so hard she could barely speak.
Can I hug you?
She managed to get the words out. Lily nodded, and Sophia pulled her close, and Jake watched them cling to each other on his front porch and felt something break and heal in his chest simultaneously. He wanted to protect them both from more pain, wanted to believe this time would be different, wanted to trust that Sophia's choice was permanent. But all he could do was stand there and hope. And sometimes, hoping was the bravest thing you could do. Come inside. We should talk. They settled in the living room, Lily pressed against Sophia's side like she was afraid to let her go, and for the next 2 hours, they talked about everything. Sophia told them about her last 5 months, about the work and the pressure, and the slow, painful process of realizing she'd betrayed herself and the people she loved. Lily told Sophia about school, about her new teacher,
about the chapter book she was reading where a girl went on adventures with a dragon. Jake mostly listened, watching the way they interacted, looking for signs of damage or distance or anything that suggested this reconciliation was premature. But what he saw instead was healing. Lily's laughter came easier as the evening wore on. Sophia's shoulders gradually relaxed. The conversation flowed naturally, picking up threads from 5 months ago and weaving them into something that acknowledged the break but didn't dwell on it. And when Lily's eyes started to droop, still pressed against Sophia's side, Jake felt something cautiously optimistic take root. "I should go. Let you get her to bed." Sophia said it softly, looking down at Lily, who was fighting sleep with everything she had.
"No!"
Lily jerked awake.
"You can't leave. What if you don't come back again?"
"Lily," Jake started, but Sophia cut him off. "I will come back. Tomorrow, if your dad says it's okay. And the day after that. And the day after that. I'm not disappearing again, sweetheart. You're stuck with me now."
"Promise?"
Lily's voice was tiny, vulnerable.
"Promise."
Lily looked at Jake.
"Can she come for breakfast? Please?"
Jake met Sophia's eyes over his daughter's head. There was a question there, a request for permission to keep showing up, to prove through action what words couldn't convey. He knew he should be more cautious, should make her work harder to earn back what she'd lost, but he was tired of protecting himself, tired of living small and safe and alone. "Breakfast sounds good. 8 o'clock. Sophia's smile was like sunrise. "I'll be here." She stood to leave, and Lily hugged her one more time, fierce and tight. Then Jake walked Sophia to the door while Lily ran to get ready for bed, and in the privacy of the entryway, Sophia touched his arm lightly.
"Thank you for letting me try again. I know I don't deserve—"
"Maybe it's not about deserving. Maybe it's about choosing. You chose us today. Let's see if you keep choosing us tomorrow." Jake interrupted her gently.
"I will. Every day for as long as you'll let me."
She left with Lily's drawing clutched carefully in her hand, and Jake stood in his doorway, watching her taillights disappear into the gathering dark. Behind him, he could hear Lily singing in the bathroom, the sound bright and joyful in a way it hadn't been for months. And for the first time since that terrible night in December, Jake let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be put back together after all. The question was whether they'd be stronger in the broken places, or whether the cracks would always remain, waiting for the next pressure to make them shatter completely. He wouldn't know until he tried, and trying, he was learning, was sometimes the same thing as hoping. And hoping, despite everything, still felt like the bravest thing he knew how to do. Sophia showed up the next morning at 7:45, 15 minutes early, carrying a paper bag from a local bakery and looking like she hadn't slept. Jake opened the door in his work clothes, coffee already brewed, Lily still in her pajamas watching cartoons on the couch. And for a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other in the morning light. "I brought cinnamon rolls. I remembered Lily liked them." Sophia held up the bag like evidence of good intentions. "She does. You didn't have to do that."
"I know. I wanted to."
Lily came running before they could say anything else, launching herself at Sophia with the uncomplicated joy of a child who'd decided to forgive. Sophia caught her, swinging her around, and Jake watched them and felt the first real stirring of something that might eventually become trust again. They ate breakfast together at the kitchen table, Lily chattering about her dreams and the cartoon she'd been watching, Sophia listening with the kind of focused attention that made people feel seen. Jake mostly stayed quiet, drinking his coffee, observing the dynamic, looking for fault lines or false notes. But what he saw instead was genuine. Sophia asking questions and meaning them, Lily responding with growing confidence, the rhythm they'd had before tentatively rebuilding itself. After breakfast, Jake had to leave for work, a full day at the shop, unavoidable. He stood in the doorway with his keys in his hand, torn between responsibility and the instinct to stay and supervise, to make sure Sophia didn't disappear the moment he turned his back. "I can stay with her, if you're comfortable with that. I don't have to be at the office until this afternoon." Sophia offered it quietly, reading his hesitation. Ryan looked at Lily, who was already pulling Sophia toward her room to show her the new book she'd gotten from the library. His daughter was practically vibrating with happiness, and he knew what the answer should be, knew that trust had to start somewhere, that at some point he had to choose to believe Sophia's promises instead of protecting against her potential betrayal. "Okay, but Lily has a playdate at noon with her friend Sophie. Sophie's mom will pick her up." "I'll make sure she's ready," Sophia promised. Jake nodded and headed for the door, then stopped and turned back. "Sophia." She looked up from where Lily was tugging on her hand. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't." There was such quiet certainty in her voice that Jake almost believed her. Work was impossible. Jake went through the motions, changing oil and rotating tires and replacing brake pads, but his mind was 3 miles away in his small house where his daughter was rebuilding trust with a woman who'd broken it. He checked his phone obsessively. No missed calls, no emergency texts, nothing to suggest disaster, but the anxiety wouldn't settle. He'd been burned before, learned the hard way that the people you loved could leave without warning, and pattern recognition was a survival skill that didn't just switch off because you wanted it to. But at noon, his phone buzzed with a text from Sophie's mom. "Got Lily. She seems really happy today. Everything good?" Jake typed back a simple, "Yeah, thanks," and felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Sophia had followed through. Small thing, maybe, but it mattered. The day dragged on. Jake finished his last job at 5:30, cleaned up, and drove home expecting to find the house empty, Lily still at Sophie's until the scheduled 6 o'clock pickup. Instead, he found Sophia's car in his driveway and lights on in his kitchen. He walked in to find her at the stove, stirring something that smelled like actual home cooking, and the sight stopped him in the doorway. She'd made herself at home in his space again, knew where the pots were and how he liked things organized, and it felt both comforting and terrifying. "You're back. I hope you don't mind. I thought I'd make dinner. Lily will be home soon, and I figured—" She stopped, suddenly uncertain. "I'm sorry, I should have asked. I can go if this is too much, too fast." "No, it's good. What are you making?" Jake set down his keys, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. "Just pasta, nothing fancy. I'm not exactly a chef." She turned back to the stove, and Jake could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was trying so hard to do everything right that she'd forgotten how to be natural. He moved to stand beside her, close enough to see what she was cooking, far enough to maintain the careful distance they hadn't quite figured out how to bridge yet. "How was Lily this morning?" "Happy. We played games and read books, and she told me about everything I missed these last few months. Her favorite subject is art now. Did you know that?" Sophia's voice was soft. "She said it's because someone taught her that art is just paying attention to the world." Jake felt his throat tighten. She missed you more than I think she knew how to say.
I missed her too. Missed both of you. Every single day, Jake.
Her voice dropped.
I know I was the one who stayed away, but it wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared too much and didn't know how to be brave enough for it.
And now? Jake asked, watching her face in profile. Are you brave enough now? Sophia met his eyes, and hers were clear and honest in a way they hadn't been last night. The exhaustion burned away to reveal something harder underneath. I'm trying to be. That's all I can promise. Then I'm trying. They stood there in his kitchen with the pasta boiling between them, and Jake wanted to reach for her, wanted to close the distance and kiss her and pretend the last 5 months had been a bad dream. But he couldn't. Not yet. The hurt was still too fresh, the trust too fragile. Lily came home at 6, bursting through the door with Sophie's mom behind her, and the spell broke. Lily saw Sophia and squealed, running to her like they'd been separated for days instead of hours, and Jake watched them and thought about how easily his daughter forgave, how readily she opened herself up to being hurt again, because the alternative was living closed off and afraid. Maybe he could learn something from that. Sophie's mom left after some pleasantries and knowing looks at Sophia that Jake chose to ignore, and they sat down to dinner, the three of them at the kitchen table again, like no time had passed at all. Lily talked non-stop about her playdate, and Sophia asked questions, and Jake ate his pasta and tried to figure out how to navigate this new reality where everything was the same and nothing was. After dinner, Sophia started to clean up, but Jake stopped her. I've got it. You should go. Long day tomorrow. It wasn't really a dismissal, but it wasn't an invitation to stay either, and Sophia heard the ambiguity in his tone. Yeah, teaching my first class at 9. She turned to Lily. Can I get another hug before I go? Lily wrapped her arms around Sophia's waist, holding tight. You're coming back tomorrow, right? If it's okay with your dad. They both looked at Jake, waiting, and he realized this was the pattern they'd fall into. Sophia asking permission, Jake granting it, both of them dancing around the real question of whether she was just visiting or actually coming home. Yeah, you can come back. Sophia's smile was grateful and sad at the same time. She kissed the top of Lily's head, nodded at Jake, and left. And Jake stood at the sink washing dishes while Lily hummed in the living room, and he wondered how long they could sustain this careful choreography before someone demanded more or walked away again. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that was almost normal. Sophia came over most days, either in the morning before her work or in the evening after, never staying the night, never pushing for more than Jake seemed ready to give, but her presence became a constant again. Lily bloomed under the attention, her drawings filling with color, her laughter coming easier, and Jake found himself watching Sophia with a mixture of longing and wariness, wanting to believe in her staying power, but unable to fully release the fear that she'd disappear again. They existed in a strange liminal space, more than friends, not quite partners, united by their love for Lily, but separated by everything unsaid between them. They didn't touch except accidentally, didn't talk about the future except in vague terms, didn't acknowledge the elephant in the room, which was that at some point they'd have to decide what this was and whether it was sustainable. Then one Saturday in late May, Sophia showed up with dark circles under her eyes and her hands shaking slightly as she set down the groceries she'd brought for breakfast. Lily was still asleep and Jake was making coffee, and when he turned to ask Sophia what was wrong, he found her staring at him with something desperate in her expression. I can't do this anymore. She said it abruptly. Jake's stomach dropped. Can't do what? This.
The careful distance. The pretending we're just friends co-parenting your daughter. The never talking about what happened or what we are or whether you're ever going to forgive me. Her voice cracked. I know I hurt you. I know I have to earn back your trust. But Jake, I don't know how to do that if you won't let me close enough to try. You've built this wall between us and I understand why, but I'm suffocating behind it. I need to know if there's any chance you'll ever let me back in, or if I'm just going to be the girl who comes over to see Lily while you tolerate my presence because your daughter loves me. Jake set down his coffee mug carefully, his hands suddenly unsteady.
What do you want me to say? I want you to tell me the truth.
Do you still... Sophia stopped, forced herself to continue. Do you still have feelings for me? Or did I kill that when I left? The question hung in the air between them, heavy and unavoidable. Jake looked at her, at the exhaustion and hope and fear written across her face, and he felt 5 months of suppressed emotion rise up in his throat. Of course I still have feelings for you. That's not the problem. The problem is, I don't know if I can survive you leaving again. The problem is Lily asking every night for months when you were coming back, and me having to say I didn't know. The problem is, I let you in once, and you left, and now you're asking me to do it again, and His voice broke. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. Sophia crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and grabbed his hands, holding them tight. Then tell me what you need.
Tell me what I have to do to prove I'm staying, because I will do it, Jake. Whatever it takes, I will show up every single day until you believe me. It's not about showing up. Jake's voice was rough with emotion. It's about, I need to know that when things get hard, when your father comes back, or when the pressure builds, or when you wake up one day and realize you're 28 years old playing house with a mechanic and his kid instead of advancing your career, I need to know you won't run, that you'll stay and fight instead of folding. I will. Sophia's voice was fierce. I swear to you, I will. I'm not the same person who left in December. I've spent the last 6 months figuring out who I am without my parents' approval, without their control, without any safety net. And you know what I learned? I learned that the only thing I can't live without is this. You and Lily and the family we were building before I got too scared to see how precious it was. Jake wanted to believe her, wanted to pull her close and kiss her and let down all his defenses. But the fear was still there, cold and insistent, reminding him of all the ways this could go wrong. I need time. I know that's not fair to you, but I need more time to trust that this is real. Sophia nodded, blinking back tears. Okay. I can give you time, just please don't shut me out completely while you're taking it. I'm not shutting you out. I'm protecting myself and Lily. I know. And I understand, but Jake, she squeezed his hands. While you're protecting yourself, don't forget to leave room for the possibility that this could work. That I could be who you need me to be. Because I'm already that person. I've already chosen you. I just need you to choose me back. Before Jake could respond, Lily's voice came from the hallway. Sophia, are you staying for breakfast? They pulled apart quickly, and Sophia wiped her eyes before turning with a smile.
Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying. But as she moved to greet Lily, Jake saw her shoulders hitch slightly, saw the effort it took to push down her emotion and be present for his daughter. And he realized with sudden clarity that Sophia was hurting too, that she'd made mistakes, but was doing everything she could to fix them. That she was showing up every day, trying to prove herself, living in this uncertain space because she believed they were worth the wait. Maybe it was time he started believing it too. That afternoon, after Sophia left for work and Lily was occupied with a craft project, Jake called his sister in Seattle. Michelle was 5 years older, had 2 kids of her own, and had been the one to hold him together when Sarah left. She was also the only person besides Lily who knew about Sophia. So she came back. Michelle's voice held no judgment, just observation. Yeah, 3 weeks ago.
And how do you feel about that? Jake leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the wall where one of Sophia's drawings still hung, something she'd made for Lily back in December, a watercolor of a garden in impossible colors.
I don't know. Scared mostly. She says she's changed, that she won't leave again. But how am I supposed to know that? You're not. That's the thing about trust, Jake. You can't know. You can only choose to believe or choose to protect yourself. And neither choice is wrong, but they lead to very different places. Michelle paused. What if I choose wrong? Then you deal with it. But what if you choose right? What if she really has changed and you miss out on something real because you're too scared to try again? Jake closed his eyes. Lily's already attached to her again. If Sophia leaves, it's not just me who gets hurt. Lily's 8. She's resilient.
And honestly, watching you model healthy relationships and appropriate risk-taking is probably better for her than watching you live scared and closed off. Michelle's tone gentled. Look, I'm not saying jump in with both feet. I'm just saying maybe stop standing on the edge waiting for someone to push you. Make a choice. Either tell her it's not going to work and let her go, or commit to trying for real. This half in, half out thing isn't fair to anyone. She was right. Jake knew she was right, but knowing and doing were different things, and the gap between them felt impossibly wide. He spent the next few days thinking about what Michelle had said, watching Sophia with Lily, seeing how she'd integrated herself back into their lives with patience and consistency. She never asked for more than he offered, never pushed, just showed up day after day, being exactly who she'd promised to be.
On Thursday evening, after Lily was in bed, Sophia lingered in the doorway, preparing to leave, and Jake found himself saying something he'd been thinking. Stay for a bit. I want to talk. They settled on the couch, their old spot, the place where most of their important conversations had happened, and Jake took a breath and made himself say what he'd been thinking. I've been unfair to you, keeping you at arm's length but not letting you go, making you prove yourself over and over without giving you any indication that it's working. Jake, let me finish. You hurt me when you left. Really hurt me. And I've been holding on to that hurt as protection, as a reason to not take the risk again. But Michelle, my sister, she pointed out that I'm not actually protecting anyone. I'm just punishing us both for a mistake you've already apologized for and are actively working to fix. He turned to face her. I'm not saying I'm all the way there yet. I'm not saying the fear is gone, or that I fully trust this won't fall apart. But I'm saying, he reached for her hand, tentative. I'm saying, I want to try. Really try. Not this halfway thing we've been doing, but actually being together and seeing where it goes. You mean it? Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, I mean it. But I need you to understand what you're signing up for. I come with baggage and a kid and a life that's not glamorous. I work long hours at a job that barely pays enough. I live in a house that's falling apart. And I'm still learning how to trust again.
It's not going to be easy. I don't want easy. Sophia was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she gripped his hand like a lifeline. I want real. I want you and Lily and this messy, imperfect life you've built. That's all I've ever wanted. Jake pulled her close and she collapsed against him, and they held each other on that couch while Portland's perpetual rain started up outside. And for the first time in 6 months, Jake let himself believe that maybe broken things could be made whole, that maybe second chances were real, that maybe choosing love over fear was worth the risk. I'm scared. He admitted it quietly, his lips against her hair. Me too, Sophia whispered back. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe with anyone else. They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, letting the weight of everything unsaid finally settle into something that felt like resolution. And when Sophia finally pulled back to look at him, Jake saw his own hope and fear reflected in her eyes. Can I kiss you? She asked it softly. In answer, Jake cupped her face and closed the distance between them. The kiss was different than he remembered, less desperate, more certain, a promise instead of a question. Sophia kissed him back with something that felt like coming home, and Jake thought about all the ways a person could be lost and found, broken and healed, afraid and brave. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sophia rested her forehead against his. I love you. I should have said it before. Should have said it that night in December before they took me away. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Jake Morrison. I love your daughter. I love this life you've built from scratch. And I'm not going anywhere. Jake felt something crack open in his chest, that last piece of armor finally giving way. I love you too. Never stopped, even when I wanted to. They kissed again, slower this time, and Jake let himself sink into it, let himself believe in the possibility of happiness, let himself trust that this time, things might actually work out. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, washing the streets clean, making everything new. Sophia stayed that night, not in Jake's bed, they weren't ready for that yet, still navigating the careful reconstruction of trust, but on the couch where they'd fallen asleep tangled together, talking until the early hours about everything they'd been too afraid to say. When Jake woke at dawn, stiff and uncomfortable, Sophia's head was on his shoulder, and her hand was clasped in his, and for a moment he just lay there, feeling the weight of her against him, solid and real and present. He must have moved because Sophia stirred, blinking up at him in the gray morning light. Hi. Her voice was rough with sleep. Hi. And then they were kissing again, soft and unhurried, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Lily found them like that 20 minutes later, still on the couch, and her delighted shriek of, "Sophia stayed over!" brought them both back to reality. Jake pulled away, suddenly aware that his daughter was witnessing this shift, this new thing they were becoming, and he needed to make sure she understood what it meant. Come here, kiddo. He pulled Lily onto the couch between them. Sophia and I need to talk to you about something. Lily looked between them, her expression serious. Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now? Sophia laughed, surprised. How did you were kissing. That's what boyfriend and girlfriend do. Connor at school told me. Jake exchanged a glance with Sophia, and she nodded, giving him permission to navigate this conversation. Yeah, we are. Is that okay with you? Lily considered this with the gravity of a judge deliberating a verdict. Does that mean Sophia's going to live here?
Not right away. Sophia said it carefully. I have my own apartment right now, but I'll be here a lot if that's okay with you.
Like every day?
Probably most days.
Lily nodded slowly, then turned to Jake.
Daddy, does this mean Sophia's going to be my mom?
The question hit Jake like a physical blow. He looked at Sophia and saw his own shock reflected in her eyes, mixed with something that might have been hope, or terror, or both. You know how sometimes the biggest truths get spoken by the smallest voices? That's what it felt like sitting between his daughter and the woman he loved, trying to find words for a future none of them had dared to name out loud yet. There are no shortcuts through the hard questions. You either face them or you don't. And facing them means accepting that some answers change everything that comes after.